Okay, this is Introduction to Measurement. I'm going to teach you how to measure today. Please have a pencil and paper out because there's some notes you're going to want to take during this, and just go ahead and write measurement at the top of your piece of paper. Also, feel free to pause the video to catch up at any point or rewind if you need to. Couple things quick, you don't have to write this down. Why should you learn how to measure? There's three things here. Number one, anything from carpenters to doctors use measurement. It's a very valuable skill for many different types of jobs. People always think, well, I'll never have to learn how to use it. A lot of jobs even have it in their interviewing process. Can you read this ruler? So you need it for that. A lot of hobbies, anything from, if you want to maybe be somebody that does baking all the way to somebody that does sewing. I mean, it's endless how many hobbies use measurement. And just everyday life, I mean, there's things that you can use measurement for. Let's keep going. Measurement systems, there's two types. Standard, which also is called customary. We use that here in the United States. We are one of 3 countries in the world that use this system. And then the rest of the world uses the metric system. I'm sure you're thinking right now, why is this? Unfortunately, it's just the way things are. Back in the 80s, I'm told, I'm not that old, we had tried to switch over to the metric system and it just didn't pan out. So we need to learn the measurement system for our country. It's actually great to know both, but yeah, we use standard. So here's a standard inch. It's broken down into a bunch of different lines, fractions of an inch. So these big lines are a whole inch on a ruler, and then you can just basically cut it down into fractions. So if you look here, the second biggest line cuts the inch into 2 halves, and then these smaller lines cut into 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. The next set goes 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/7, 8, and then 1/16. So cuts it down to fractions. This is where people get crazy. They're like, I don't know how to read it. What do I do? Well, I'll tell you. There are 4 steps that you need to know in order to measure, and these you are going to write down and take notes on. Okay? First thing you do if you want to measure a line is you need to find out on your ruler how many parts your inches on your ruler are divided into. And you do this by counting the spaces between an inch, and that number will be your denominator. So go ahead, pause the video now, write all this down. This is step number 1. To show you this, here's our ruler right here. So all I have to do is take a look at it. Let me make this a bit bigger. All I have to do is look at it. Okay, I see here's our inch from big line to big line. I got to count how many lines there are between the inches. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts to our inch. So that's going to be our denominator of whatever our measurement is. So in just a bit, we're going to measure our own line. And I'll go ahead and write down my denominator. Okay, I've got an 8 for a denominator of my measurement. Okay. Now, second step is you have to count the number of whole inches that your line passes, and you're going to write down that number. That's going to be your big number. So go ahead, pause the video, and write down number 2. Count the number of whole inches that your line passes. Okay, so once again, we're back here. I'm going to go ahead and measure with my handy dandy ruler. I put the end of it right up to the end of the line here, and I'm going to count how many full inches that my line passes. Well, it goes past 1, 2, 3, 4, does not quite make it to the 5. Okay, doesn't quite make it to the 5, so I have 4 and some odd out of 8, some number out of 8. Okay, so 4 inches I've passed and some amount out of 8. Okay, step 3. Count the number of spaces after the last whole inch. This will be the numerator, or the top of your fraction. So count the number of spaces after your last whole inch. Go ahead, pause the video and write that down. And let's see that. So I put my ruler back up here, and I count the number of spaces. After the 4, which was my last whole inch, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Stops right at the 6. So I've got 4 and 6/8 is my measurement. Next step, we'll just read it from here. Reduce fraction if necessary. Okay, this one is really simple. People get stuck on it a lot, but we have this number right here. Okay, 4 6/8. This is a correct measurement, by the way. This is accurate. It just needs to be broken down a bit. So 4 6/8. Well, there's something wrong with our fraction here. And basically what I tell people is take a look at the top and bottom number. If you can cut both of those numbers in half, do it. So, can you cut 6 in half? Yeah. Gives you 3. Okay. Can you cut 8 in half? Yeah. Gives you 4. Okay. So every time you measure something, always look at the fraction afterwards and say, can I cut the top and bottom in half? And if you can, do so. So our correct measurement is 4 3/4 of an inch. This line is 4 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so measurement really isn't that bad. And just to review once more, you figure out how many parts are between your inch. You measure how many whole inches that we passed and write that down. And then you measure how many little parts past that last whole inch. You write that up top. You reduce. Okay, not too bad. What I want you to do now is we're going to take a little look at this review page right here, and then you're going to have a little activity that I hand you. So let's review. Okay, and I want you to do this before I say the answer. Okay, find the denominator. So on this ruler, count how many parts are between each inch. Pause the video and figure that out. Hopefully you get the correct answer. If you counted 16, you counted correctly. Step 2. Count the number of whole inches from the beginning of this measurement to the end. Well, how many whole inches does it pass? I would hope that everybody here can see that it is 1 inch. Okay? And finally, we have to figure out the numerator. We have to count how many little parts we pass after the last whole inch. So starting right here until we reach this line. So how many parts? Go ahead, count them up. Pause the video. If you counted 7, you counted correctly. Okay, last but not least, step 4, reduce that fraction. Can you cut the top and bottom numbers both in half? Well, if you cut 7 in half, you can't do it. You get a 3.5. We don't want decimals, we want whole numbers. So no, you cannot reduce this. This measurement is 1 7/16 of an inch. If you have further questions from here, please come back to me. Work on your worksheet with me. I would much rather you get this skill than be embarrassed and not get the help that you need. So please get this done. If you don't know how to measure, it is a problem. Okay, so we want to get that corrected. I promise you by the end of the day, we will have you walking out the door knowing how to measure. Good luck on your worksheet. Go ahead and get to work.